But in a situation where you find that a party look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us again, it's Trust Television. We have in the studio this morning to give us insight on what the newspaper headlines are saying this morning. The editor-in-chief of Dateline newspaper and a friend of the house, if you like, a stakeholder of the house at this point. You move from friend to stakeholder. And I'm talking about no other than Marlon Nasrullah. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Good morning. It's always good to be here.
Thank you. We will start with our first newspaper, as usual, the Daily Trust. And featuring very prominently on the covers of the Daily Trust this morning is a lead with the kicker, APC Presidential Primaries, confusion, horse trading among governors, aspirants, camps. With the riders, consensus talk divide governors, lobbies intensify push, discordant tones as aspirants claim Buhari's endorsement. I mean, this has always been there from day one. Everybody who shows up at the presidential villa seems to have one kind of endorsement.
Or another, yeah.
It appears like they seem to be meeting a different president in the villa than the one we know. That's a major story on Daily Trust newspaper. And moving on to those directly behind the nameplate, we have APC PDP post-primary crisis hit states. You'll find that story on page 3. FEC OK's NNPC ECOWAS Pact on Nigeria's Morocco gas pipeline. We just brought you a report prior to the newspaper segment on this, but you can find the details of this story on page 22. And on the editor's peak, inflation, Buhari convenes National Food Security Council meeting, 6 global collaboration. You find that story on page 4. Kwara reopens schools, reaffirms use of hijab. I mean, if you had followed this story, you know the kind of crisis that what is just merely symbolic has become of a society that should tolerate and respect our individual differences while we strive to build a community. Ukraine conflicts, ISDB, that is the Islamic Development Bank, to support Nigeria, others. And I think this is more like a direct response to the earlier story on Buhari convening a National Food Security Council meeting. And the major belts on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning is bandit adopts cause, burn 8 vehicles on the Kaduna Highway. That's the sad one. They are making every effort to shut down that road completely, or rather shut down or isolate completely Kaduna from every other part of the country. Really and the major picture on the Daily Trust this morning, it's the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar receiving his certificate of return. That looks like one Ivy League certificate from.
And this has to be like the 6th time he's actually received a certificate.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That should be taking up some important spaces in his office or home. From the national chairman of the PDP, Iyocha Ayu, yesterday at the PDP National Secretariat. In the middle, you have there Senator Samuel Anyang, clapping and with others observing from the background.
All right, well, let's move on to our guest in the studio, and let's begin with the lead story here on Daily Trust, talking about the APC Presidential Primary and as confusion, horse trading among governors and aspirants camp. But what's your take on all of this?
It's actually quite unfortunate that just like 4 or 5 days to the deadline, we are still talking about confusion, because if INEC had not extended the deadline, we would be talking about submitting whoever is the candidate by tomorrow. But we are still talking about the governors not even being on the same page, about something that all of them are going to be like major stakeholders. So what I believe is for the presidency to be able to come out in a way that people will not be, ascribing some things to it. You see so many of the aspirants claiming to have the endorsement of the president. Some people around the president. Why should we be talking about that when you have the delegates to try to by telling them what you intend to do, the things that you have in store for Nigerians and things like that. That's what we should be talking about. But we are still bogged down by the news of governors not, being on the same page, which is quite unfortunate.
My worry with this development is, on the one hand, it appears like the hint the president dropped is not democratic, right? But on the other hand, you have governors who
the
themselves...
hints where he said he wants to choose his successor.
who themselves have perfected the act of always wanting to pick their successor. Some of them go as far as picking their own son-in-laws. And if possible, even daring to want to even put their children forward. Should they have been surprised? Is it that they didn't see the handwriting coming all along, that the president was going to end up with his own candidate?
It will be very wrong for them to do that because, like you said, even the president actually made reference to that in his speech, to say that just like they were allowed to play a major role in the emergence of their potential successors, he should also be supported to do the same. But so many people will say it's probably late because the president has done his own part. So it's left to the governors whether to do the bidding of the president or to do what they want to do independently without maybe taking into consideration what the president wants to achieve. What actually the governors did in their own states, at least they subjected, the people to some form of election, even though you can see their influence all over the place. This is what I also expect the president to do. Since we are in a democracy, you are not allowed to just come out to say, this is the person that I want to succeed me, when there are processes to follow. It's either you do it through the direct primaries, like it's allowed by the Electoral Act, or the indirect primaries, or even consensus. If you are settling for consensus, you should know that there are also certain things that you need to give before you will be able to do that, because you can't be talking about consensus when other aspirants are claiming to maybe be shut out of the process. So the governors should have seen this coming, like you said, but the president should also should have done his homework much earlier, so that by now we'll be talking about maybe just crossing the dotting the I's and crossing the T's and all that. But now that we are still, probably he didn't show enough interest in the first
in the
place.
beginning, because he said that he's not interested, in who succeeds him. But now, a lot of people are actually saying that he's actually imposing someone on Nigeria, and also saying that Oshibajo fits the description of who he wants to succeed him.
Well, you can see even people like I wouldn't want to start mentioning names, but virtually all the aspirants are claiming to have, the endorsement of the president, and that's because there is no clear indication from the presidency to show. And like you said, this is a man that in the past, said he is not interested in whoever will succeed him. It's left to Nigerians to decide that. Even at the moment, that's what should happen. I don't think it will be imposition of a successor, because we're only talking about the APC primaries.
That's right.
After the APC primaries, there is still the general election. And of course, so many people will say it wouldn't give them some confidence for the president to be talking like this, because already people are claiming that maybe they want to influence the electoral empire by coming out to say things like this. So they should have respected the law, called the people candidate at the moment. They are not yet successors. It's only when Nigerians decide, as such, that they will become successors. For now, they can only be candidates ready to participate in the 2023 election.
All right, so let's move on to yet another story. We actually talked about this earlier, but we would like you to share your thoughts on the inflation and how Buhari has convened, or it convenes National Food Security Council meeting seeking global collaboration, and also linking it to, the Islamic Bank, supporting Nigeria and other countries as well.
Well, like the president is trying to do, inflation is right now a global problem. It's virtually all over the place. Some are blaming the war in Ukraine, for the escalation of some of these things that we are seeing. But honestly, I think we should start moving away from, just holding conferences, talk shops and what have you, when in reality, the common man is not seeing the benefit of, all that. If you are talking about inflation, there is a reason for it. So why don't you just tackle that problem so that the people will be able to get what they want, without suffering to get them. These are some of these things that we are even talking about are things that we can source even locally. We are talking about food, we are talking about wheat, for instance. Nigeria has the capacity to do so much, but we are not doing that at the moment. And coupled with the insecurity, there are so many things you cannot do, when in reality we should be the ones actually deciding the price of these commodities around the globe. But look at the size of our population. Even though some people will argue that the population is not productive, how many of them will be able to afford, the basic things of life? Because, and that boils down to the problem. The problem boils down to the government also, because it's the government that is responsible for most of the things that are happening.
True, absolutely true. Talking about a productive economy, it starts from one small shop being able to employ 2 people, who then, just like Ponzi scheme, go on to employ 2 people, and 2 people bring 2 people, and then we move on from there. But a very disturbing report on the cover of the Daily Trust definitely would be the bandits adopting scores and burning 8 vehicles on the Kaduna Highway. Would we ever get to a point where we are able to secure that 160-kilometer stretch? What is difficult in guaranteeing safety and security on that corridor? And to think that these abductions are done in broad daylight, not exactly at night. It appears like when we go to sleep, they also go to sleep. And then when we wake up, they wake up to come
to work.
Is there anything we can do to secure this highway as a sign of some kind of security presence?
Actually, the story is not talking about the Kaduna-Abuja highway this time around. It's actually talking about the Birnin-Gwari highway. Kaduna highway. Which so many drivers, so many motorists have long abandoned that route, because apart from the poor nature of that road, there is also the insecurity. And people are now talking about the presence of not only the bandits, but also terrorists, Boko Haram, Ansar, and the other non-state actors that they are virtually in charge. I will tell you a story. I have my maternal grandparents, from Kwantagora, and I used to visit them like every other year. But like 4 years on now, I have not been able to do that. In fact, they will even tell me, don't even try it. At least we have the telephone, and you can call and exchange whatever pleasantries you want to exchange. But being on that road, for you, the traveler, you won't be at a rest of mind until you reach your destination. The same thing with all the people that know that you are traveling. They wouldn't be comfortable until you call them to say that, okay, I have arrived at my destination. And so this is something that we shouldn't be talking about. Even the Kaduna-Abuja highway, it's still, how many people, I know so many people that have not traveled for like 2 months now because of the state of that road, because anything can happen. You just don't know when. So people don't feel comfortable actually taking that route.
All right. Well, with that, we'll move on to the next paper, which is Nigerian Tribune. And the lead story talks about president's successor, disquiet in APC. Okay, apologies for that. Disquiet in APC over Buhari's statement. We have writers that say your choice of candidates will jeopardize our chance. Stakeholders tell Buhari NWC members want party leadership on danger of consensus candidate. And then if you look above the nameplates there, you find a story that talks about FG to convene food security meeting. FEC okays 23.5 billion naira for petroleum, power, police ministry projects. We must unite to end APC misrule. Atiku rallies PDP as he gets his certificate of return. And on news analysis, 2023 presidential race, APC and Nigeria face daunting odds. Now, if you look at the pictorial there, you'd find scenes of some motorcycles seized by security operatives during the enforcement of the ban on Alqaeda operations in Lagos on Wednesday. And, you know, below that pictorial, a story that talks about Alqaeda ban enforcement taking off in Lagos. Commercial motorcyclists disappear from Apapa, Tinkan, Igomu, Ijora. Port users trek, ride bicycles. Lagos steps up action on alternative transport services. And then we also have, finally, unremitted tax deductions. FIRS begins enforcement to bar defaulting states from local external borrowings and bond issuance. These are some of the stories on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune.
Looking at that major story on
the president's successors.
Do you think some of the aspirants feel that by the virtue of that statement that they are completely out of the contention to even be complaining, you know, about what danger it portends for the party?
Well, you know, this is politics. Politicians have a way of hiding, you know, their interest. For instance, if you are an aspirant, you should be able to have an idea of your chances, the chances that you have. But nobody is talking about that. They will all claim to be like forerunners. You know, they will be claiming to be at the forefront, one of the leading aspirant, you know, things like that. When they know that even among the aspirants, if they are to subject them to just the minimal of test, you know, they won't be able to scale through. But these are the people that will be making all the noise, you know, and then by the time the primary is held, you will see them having two, three, or even no vote at all. Even though some people are saying now that the process has been monetized, sometimes it's even better to score 0, so that you
will get some money back.
Yeah, you will get your money back, because nobody will come and tell you that you know, was like the one who voted for you, since there is nobody to claim that.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's move on to, you know, the pictorial there on Nigerian Tribune talking about the Alqaeda ban, you know, in Lagos. Well, you know, some, you know, are definitely for it, some are definitely against it. Now, do you think this should also be, you know, there should be a ban in Abuja, because the rate at which, you know, these motorcyclists are committing a lot of atrocities, you know, is getting out of hand. You know, talking about how some of them went to an estate, you know, in local Goma, like last week, to, you know, burn down the gatehouse, and even started burning down houses, you know, because someone, a driver actually, you know, knocked, you know, their colleague down. Taking laws into their hands, you know, jungle justice. Do you think the same should be applied in Abuja?
Already there is a motorcycle ban, you know, but in the city center. But most of the satellite towns, you know, there are still commercial motorcycles operating. But I see this as symptomatic of the problem that we have as a nation. We still cannot boast of a good transport system. If you have a good transport system, nobody will want to, you know, hop onto an Okada, like a former columnist of the Daily Trust, used to write that jumping onto an Okada is like jumping onto a conclusion. And that way they have concluded so many lives, you know. That's something that he will say. But look at what is happening. We are still importing motorcycles. And if you see the number, honestly, you will be amazed. Because are we like supplying the bandits? Because they are like some of the major users of all these motorcycles that we are bringing in. And because most of these commercial motorcycles that you see around are actually at the margin, you know, so that's like the only hope they have. They are close to being, you know, that's at the bottom. They see no stake at all, so they don't have anything to lose should anything happen. So I will expect the government to be able to do the needful, take care of our the unemployment population, and then do something about the transport system. If you have a credible, a very efficient transport system, believe me, I know so many people that no longer use Okada because of the tricycles, you know, because they are safer, and then they are not like reckless the same way the commercial motorcyclists are. So that's what we should be talking about. We want to end this thing, and yet we allow people to be importing these motorcycles on a daily basis. Where do we expect all these motorcycles to end up in? And you know one thing about these commercial motorcycles, they know sometimes they are not even remitting the money that they should be remitting to the owners. Because you know why? If you take your motorcycle from them, there is the next person who is willing to give them a new one. Because we don't even know how to invest. We don't even know. We think the best way you can make money is to buy a motorcycle, give it to someone, and then he starts remitting. Honestly, we need a serious change.
True. It's unfortunate when you discuss this motorcycle issue, because it does appear like the easiest commodities that politicians share whenever this election cycle come around. They share them in thousands and then turn back when they are elected to start fighting the menace that is caused by the article that they share. Moving quickly to the these day newspapers, I beg your pardon. It appears that most of the headlines are dancing around the activities in the APC. Yes, the major headline here reads, Presidency, APC still divided on zoning, Malls option to face Atiku. The writers here, I beg your pardon, reads, some governors want to go south, Adamu others prefer north. Party may reopen sale of forms to broaden choice of candidates. Moves to encourage El-Rufai Zulu to join race. There you will find Buhari's picture on the cover in his ongoing visit to Spain, to the headquarters of the WTO, along with the Minister of Foreign Affairs there in the picture. Other headlines read, FG, disagreement among concessionaires, delaying takeoff of $3.1 billion e-customs project. OK's $968 million for emergency restoration of Lagos power line, and moves to address rising food prices. Atiku receives certificate of return, says there is much to be done. That's another headline there, and you'll find that story on page 43. Buhari, Spanish king, canvasses global cooperation to avert looming food crisis. That story is on page 41. And Army denies involvement of soldiers in the kidnap of Methodist Church prelate. That's another episode that has refused to go away from the news. We saw, and then Lawal to delegate, choose a leader with absolutely no baggage. Before we move on from this paper, since it does appear that the issue look quite similar with others, I would like you to comment on the kidnap and release of the Methodist prelate. It appears, just as with the political parties, the kidnappers have also upped their ante. 100 million now seem to be the minimum threshold for this kidnap. Where are we going with all of this?
Well, let me start by saying that I am happy that the prelate was able to return safely, even though ransom was paid, like he rightly confirmed. But our security agencies should also worry because for people to even start accusing them of complicity, of conniving with criminals, honestly, it says a lot. You can see even the Nigerian police force, I think the IGP had to disown comments made by a certain CSP in Anambra who was who accused the military and of aiding some herders, to perpetrate all these
crimes.
This is something that is coming out of frustration. Even the security agents are now becoming frustrated. So what more of the people? So our security agencies should up their game. They shouldn't allow things like this to be happening, because it is only when they happen that people will now start, alleging one or two things to it. When they don't happen, you will have to look for where to take your accusations or your blames. Yeah,
true.
So let's quickly move on to the Guardian newspaper. The lead story says APC stakeholders Pandef slam Buhari on successor charge. We have writers that say Tinubu supporters Lukman, others reject plot for consensus. Tinubu joining SDP, mere speculation, says Oni. It's absurd. There is no citizens' participation in selection process, says Pandef. Melaye says it's abominable for Buhari to pick his successor in a democracy. Ndume says Buhari in order should be interested in who succeeds him. And we have another story that talks about why malaria cases will continue to rise in Nigeria by WHO. FG plans to imprison Kanu without trial. US-based lawyer tells Ohaneze. Don Etibet, other APC chiefs raise alarm over fake delegates list to National Convention. And then we have a story right below the page that talks about 1.2 trillion naira unremitted oil money raises fresh concerns over federal government's revenue agencies. I mean, we've seen, the case of the accountants general of the Federation, and now we're seeing this 1.2 trillion naira unremitted. Share your thoughts.
I don't know why the government is, well, I wouldn't want to call them bandits because they are like doing the same thing. They are still not respecting our laws. They are not doing what they're supposed to do. They are like in war with the state, when they should actually be the ones in charge, trying to get all of us to support them for the development of the country as a whole. I even saw the FIRS like making the same threat to advise the federal government to stop the loan request of all these states, because sometimes these states and local governments will collect money that is meant for the center, and then they will not remit it. And then they will be all over the place still looking for
where to get
for
money.
Where to get money,
and
borrowing.
and then this unremitted amount that we are talking about, it is actually things like this that ASU and other agitators are using to further their case. Because you are claiming that the government has no money, and then here we are talking about huge amount of money that is still like, I wouldn't want to call them missing for now, but that have not been remitted. And nobody knows what's going to happen to them. Probably it's part of all the things that some politicians are using to do all this vote buying.
Definitely.
Possibly.
Definitely. I think we can point to a handful of those politicians who even own a bread factory, who have never done anything outside of being in governance.
Exactly.
It's terrible. We were reading in our bulletins earlier how a director of finance and administration had built a university and every other thing that had gone from merely serving in the position for 3 years. It's crazy.
It's
honestly,
sad.
if you ask me about that, I will say it's even good. Not good that he is being accused, but the fact that we can even trace
the money,
the things that he was able to do with the money. There are so many people that have taken the money out of this country. and then these monies are not going to return. Or when they are returning, they come with all sorts of
appellation.
Okay, talking about the school buildings that were seized. Now, what happens to these buildings? Because in most cases, they just seal them off, and then
allow
they
them
just
to rot away.
allow them to rot away.
Sometimes what they do is to place them under what do I call now? Is to place them under some ownership structure to show that this thing is under investigation or something like that, so that people will not transact
The business,
with them and things like that. Like they can't sell the property, they can't do so many things. A caveat.
Okay.
So moving quickly before we round up this session, we will take the nation's newspaper. I will just quickly run through the headlines. 2023 2023 president. It is South's turn after Buhari, says Ayade. I think he was making this statement at the visit of Tinubu when the Tinubu presidential campaign trail made a stopover in Cross River. Other headlines on the Nation newspaper: PDP delegate shares 7 million with community. It's windfall time. It's good that you take something to the gods. And then the ministry director for Fitz Varsity Hotel and Factory. Nigeria, Spain seek global action against food crisis. Kwara reopened schools shut last year over hijab. I think this some of the stories that were adequately captured in other newspapers that our reviewer had reviewed this morning. It's a pleasure to have had you come share your thoughts with us this morning on some of this major headline. We wish you a very delightful day.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
But in a situation where you find that a look at the
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that